All right, what's happening, everybody? Got an update for you here. I got the front of the guitar all stripped. All right, you can see the where the bubbles were. There's some places on here where's it at? Right here. Now, I don't know if that was me scraping it too much or if that was already there before I scraped my way down to it. And you can still see evidence of that top coat. This has only been scraped, it has not been sanded. This edge and this edge have been cleaned up. I would say like roughly cleaned up. I still got to get in there and really work on making that a perfectly 90-degree line in there, because it's still pretty far from that, but you can see where we're at. For the bubbles that I have on here, what I still have to do with these bubbles that I popped out is I'll go around these with a razor knife, and I'll make that bubble a little bit bigger than it is now. And the reason that I do that is because I got to make sure that I have removed all the wood, all the veneer that is not stuck down to the body. So there's going to be places where I make a cut and the piece is just going to fall right off, right? That means that there's still pieces of veneer that are not secure to the piece of maple underneath. And anywhere I run into that, I just make that bubble just a little bigger and a little bigger and a little bigger until I have gotten solid wood to wood connection. Then I'll start filling it in. I got most of the top coat off with the scraper, but you can still see how it's like white, like grayish white in the pillowing, in the figuring, in the pillow, in the quilt top maple there. So I'll take that out. I'll probably do like maybe a 120 grit sandpaper. I won't use anything too crazy coarse because the veneer is super thin. It's like a 1/4 mil. I can just like see the edge of it there. So if I use any grits that are too coarse, I'm going to wind up sanding through the veneer. And I've already got all this other patchwork to deal with here. This is a good example over here of what it would look like if I start sanding through. Now, the minute I go to finish that with something, those little wood fibers along the edge of the veneer are going to start to lift. So after I patch that, I have to primer this guitar to seal that in before I start applying color to it. So we got more work to do on the front. The back, of course, we're going to take all this off. There's some deeper scratches in it. One there, big nick, another big nick over there. And then there was somewhere, right there. There's one right there. You know, the common places that you're going to get dings and dents in the guitar. We'll get rid of all that. I did get the fretboard off, as you can see. Here it is, right here. When I got it off with an iron. I used this iron here. I bought this iron for veneer work, but I wind up using it more for stuff like this than for veneer work. But this helps me bend veneer around sharper corners if you preheat it. I got tricks for that too. I'm going to share some of those with you guys in a later video on how you can veneer an arch top with no vacuum bag. All you need is a little bit of heat. You could probably use a heat gun, but we'll talk about that later. What I like about this is that it's only 800 watts. The bigger irons are 1200 or 1500 watts, and they can scorch the wood. That works out great for me. I do have this clamped because the heat did cause the fretboard to warp, right? So I just got it clamped on a flat piece of wood so that it can hold that flat shape as it cools and, you know, dries back out. Hopefully it'll retain that flatness. If not, I'll have to steam it and clamp it flat again if this doesn't hold it. But usually when you pull a fretboard off, you can clamp it down for a day or two and it'll go back to its original shape. I did get the frets out without a lot of major problems. I'll just show them to you. I did lose a piece of binding off the edge, but I got a feeling that that was a repair, and I'll show you why I got a feeling that that was a repair. So you can see it's got some warp to it, but I mean it flattens right out. But if I keep it clamped down flat for a day or two, it'll retain that flatness. All right, so see where that piece of binding is missing. That piece of binding, you guys remember the last video where I showed you the edge and I said, I don't know if that's a crack in the headstock or not. Well, here's the missing piece of binding, and look at that piece of wood right there. That piece of wood is that crack right by the headstock, right there. So that piece of binding just happens to line up very nicely. That's where the nut is right there, and that piece of binding, I can't see it, but that piece of binding lines up with where that crack was. Okay. We might reuse this, probably not, because you know the owner of the guitar said blue or orange, so you know blue. So he said blue. But this is not going to go great with blue, so I'll have to look and see if I can get some blue binding. If not, I got other ways around it. You'll get to see that too. But let's see. Because the fretboard is off, this is a bad time for the guitar right now. And it could make a bad time for the guitar repair person right now if I'm not really careful with this. Normally, if I'm working on a project and I'm going to be refinishing it and I got like sharp objects laying around and I don't, you know, what am I going to do? Scratch it? Right? Who cares? But right now, I got to be careful. Because once you take the fretboard off the guitar, now I have this razor sharp edge right here. It's not rounded over with sandpaper. It's just where the wood transitions to the binding. So it's this razor sharp edge. So any little tiny impact right here is going to leave a dent. If you're not careful, you wind up with dents and dings all along here. Sometimes you can splinter out a little piece of wood there, and you would wind up with having a filler line all under the binding. And it's just not a good look. It can be hard. It can present problems when you're trying to put a finish on the guitar. But because I have to radius this fretboard, it's going to get shorter, right? The fretboard is going to get thinner because I'm going to take material off of it. And that binding is already a little bit thinner than I like. So after I glue this back on, I will strip off the binding and then I will rerouter the binding channel down the length of this, and I'll probably I'm not sure what if we're going to do blue or white. I'm not sure what we're going to do with the binding, but it will be wider than this binding, so that that router channel will run down into the neck. Not a lot, like we're talking about like a 1/16 of an inch, right? Not much at all, but enough to cover any of the problems that I have along that edge, like that missing piece right there. That probably is a little bit bigger than, you know, what I'll be able to get by putting wider binding on there, but I'll get most of it, so it'll be a lot less filler right there. All right, so this came out, the frets came out pretty good. I don't have a lot of tear out. Let's see, I've got a little bit right here. That's not terrible. And I've got, there was one. Where's the bad? Oh, here's the worst one right here. That's the worst piece of tear out that I got along this whole thing. There's other little tiny, like that's a little bit right there. But that's nothing. When I sand this, like, they're going to disappear. I don't even think I'm going to need to put any kind of filler back in there. But I do have to dig these out. So I don't know if it's going to show up on the oh, it is. You can actually see it. So see the diamond? I'm just going to dig out the diamond and leave the wood intact, because it's like that on all of them. So if I just dig those out, then I can put nicer inlays that I'll be proud of. Not that, but I'll put nicer inlays in there. It'll, you know, that goes with the guitar. It'll match. It'll be a theme, right? Okay. So the other thing that I really want to show you guys is this. Okay, that is not an optical illusion. See how skinny that is and how wide that is? So this truss rod is way off center. We talked about reinforcing the headstock. How am I going to reinforce the headstock? And I had decided that I'm going to run a spline down here, like from here to here, and another one from here to here. And that'll reinforce this headstock and stiffen it up. When I put a straight edge on here, can you see it? Okay, there you go. Look at that. Okay, so you know there's no funny business here. See that big space right there? And it closes up. I can close that up with just squeezing it. That's telling me that the splines that I put in here will be more than enough to pull that back into straight. Because this truss rod channel is so far off center, what I can do is I can widen this truss rod channel, like maybe a 1/16 of an inch on this side, and maybe 3/16 of an inch on this side, all the way down the length of it, and insert a hardwood piece to reinforce this neck. What that'll do is that'll allow me to straighten the neck, and it'll serve as my two splines on either side, because when I run this through, it's going to come all the way to right about here. So that's going to be, the spline on this side is going to be much thicker wider than the spline on this side because of how far off center this truss rod channel is. But when I move the truss rod channel back to center, I should have the same size spline up here as I have down here. The truss rod channel is already, it's flat on the bottom, flat enough, because I'm going to widen it up anyway, so it'll be nice and flat. I just got to be real careful that I don't go so wide that my blade cuts through that back of the neck there, because the wider I go, the shallower the neck becomes. So we're going to have to be careful about how wide we go, and that's going to determine how strong those splines are going to be. If they're just like, paper thin, they're not going to do any good, right? So they got to have a little bit of beef to them so that they work like a laminated neck when it's done. It's also a little on the deep side. This is probably a 1/16 of an inch too deep, because when the truss rod was in there, there was a space between the truss rod and the fretboard. I could pop it back in and show you, but you would see an edge right here. If that truss rod is pushed all the way in, you'd see an edge right there. So that causes other problems, right? The truss rod can rattle in there. And also you get this dead space in the truss rod where it has space to move up and down without having any tension on it. So that allows the neck to move either up if the space is at the bottom, or down if the space is at the top. So as the guitar changes temperature, the humidity in the air changes, the neck can change its shape because of that extra play in that truss rod channel. So we can eliminate all that. We can address all that. This was no fun right here, man. I hope I got this on a previous video, because I thought it was overspray lacquer, but it just looked like really caked in there. But when I started to dig it out, it was wood glue. It was just like, it was this stuff all dried out, but it was a nice thick bed of wood glue. So when you compare that, or when you combine that, all that wood glue in there, I got them pretty clean. When you combine all that wood glue in there with that polyester top coat that was on here, it's like having a wet blanket wrapped around your guitar, eating up all your sustain. That's who wants that, right? Not me. This is going to fix all that. The splines are going to fix the problem we got with the neck. Separate it from the fretboard. They'll reinforce it and make it stiff and rigid before we clamp the fretboard back onto it. Remember, the fretboard is not really going to add a lot of strength to the neck this way. It's not going to add a lot of strength to it. How this adds strength to your neck is because it's just another laminated piece of wood on the neck. So the more pieces that you have laminated together in the more different directions, the stronger your neck is going to be. People don't always love the look of a laminated neck, but don't take my word for it. Look it up for yourself. A laminated neck is way stronger than a one piece or a scarf, whether it's a bolt-on or a tenon, it doesn't matter. The laminated neck has less deflection under a load than any other kind of neck, hands down. That's all I'm going to say about that. So, the the one I'm building now, the 12-string acoustic, has a laminated neck. So I'm just saying. All right. We know where this spline, this reinforcement piece, is going to be split with the truss rod, and it's going to run out until it just disappears out there, and then we will cut it off even with the top of the headstock. That's going to bring it all the way out to here, and then we will take all this 1/4-inch thick finish off of here, and we're going to put a piece of veneer on top of the headstock, and you know, we'll make it cool. It'll be cool. It'll look nice, and it will cover that edge grain that is now exposed on the headstock. So we'll never have problems where you'll see a crack in the finish around where the splines shoot out the front of the headstock. So we got everything figured out. Now we just got to do it. So I'll come back when I'm ready to recut the channels in this. I'll probably video that, unless it's going to be a big nightmare. Then I'll just show it to you when it's all done. So that's all I got for this one, guys. Peace.